Now we're doing a phony war again. There's a false flag in Syria. Why are we in Syria? Nobody tells you. We're there because we want to help people. While we're killing kids in in Yemen, Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan, no matter where they are, we'll kill them. We want a torture facility in Cuba, but we're in Syria because we care about people. We're in Syria because there's a pipeline they want to put through it. That's why we're there. And Tulsi Gabbard comes on TV to talk about it in a real way, like, hey, let's have peace because this is crazy. We did this in Iraq. Look how it turned out. We did this in Afghanistan. Look how it turned out. We're doing this in Libya. We did it in Libya. Look how it turned out. We want to do it again in Syria. Let's not do this. What are you going to replace Assad with? And why do you want to overthrow him in the first place? Why are we teaming up with ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Syria? These are all the shit they don't talk about on the news. The news won't tell you that it's ISIS and Al-Qaeda we're working with to overthrow Assad. Yeah, we're training them and arming them. ISIS and Al-Qaeda. I bet that works out great. So when we get rid of Assad, who are we going to replace him with? ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So here's Tulsi Gabbard come on and say, hey, this is all crazy. Listen to what she says.
Here's the issue, Wolf, is what I believe, what you believe, or others believe is irrelevant. What matters here is the evidence and the facts. If President Assad is found to be responsible after an independent investigation for these horrific chemical weapons attacks, I'll be the first one to denounce him, to call him a war criminal. But the key is now with President Trump's reckless military strikes last night, it flew directly in the face of the action that the UN was working on at that time to launch an independent investigation, to find out exactly what the facts are, who was involved and who was responsible.
So that seems pretty sober. That seems like, oh, thank God a grown-up came into the room and she said, hey, let the UN do their investigation. Let's find out what the facts are before we, I don't know, start a war. Maybe we find out what the facts are before we launch Tomahawk cruise missiles into someone else's country and maybe start World War III.
We see these beautiful pictures at night from the decks of these two U.S. Navy vessels in the Eastern Mediterranean. I am tempted to quote the great Leonard Cohen, I'm guided by the beauty of our weapons. And they are beautiful pictures of fearsome armaments making what is...
So thank God we have a congresswoman like that doing that. Here's the thanks you get for doing that, for calling for sober investigations and not rushing to war. Here's the thanks you get from that. Now, these aren't right-wing maniacs. Here's your left-wing warmongers.
That is Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. She's an Iraq vet and member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and she's casting doubt on the president's claim that the Syrian government was indeed behind the chemical attack that killed as many as 100 people last Tuesday. Let's bring in Howard Dean, former Vermont governor, former DNC chair, and an MSNBC contributor, and Republican strategist Susan Del Percio, both front and center right here. Good to have you guys. Howard, how do you respond to Tulsi Gabbard?
I think it's outrageous. There's a long, well-known history, both in our Intelligence Committee, Amnesty International, Doctors Without Borders. Every single one of these agencies has said that Assad is using chemical weapons. He's a...
So then, yeah, I guess you would be for an investigation because you'll know how it's going to turn out. The investigation will prove that it's definitely him, and then we get to live by our standards of having an investigation before we invade another country. Remember how we did in Iraq? We were all sure. Everybody was sure. There could be no doubt. We were all sure. And by the way, this is a guy who was an anti-war candidate, ran against the Iraq war. He used to say he's from the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party. And here he is, couldn't be beating the war for drums more and more irresponsible. Is there a bigger menace to the country than someone who beats the war for drum and shames someone who calls for an investigation before we bomb someone? These people are disgusting. This is exactly what Chomsky talks about. They're doing it right in front of your eyes. They did it in the first Iraq war, and they're doing it now. This is really happening right in front of your eye. Hey, how does war propaganda work? Here it is.
Every single one of these agencies has said that Assad is using chemical weapons. He's a barbarian. He's murdered 500,000 of his own people. I can't...
How many people did we murder in Iraq, Howard? How many people did he murdered 500,000 of his own people? How many people did President Lincoln murder in our Civil War? Is that what you call them, murder? Or would you call those, what do you call those? Did Abraham Lincoln murder Confederate soldiers? Because that's what's happening in Syria. There's a civil war, not so civil, because most of the actors are outside actors being supplied, supported, and funded by the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. It's not a real civil war. How many did we kill in Iraq? Howard? Should someone bomb us? How many kids got lead poison in Flint? Should someone bomb us? How many heads did we crack at Occupy Wall Street? How many people got injured at Standing Rock? Should someone bomb us? We run a torture facility in Cuba. Should someone bomb us? We set the fucking Middle East on fire, you warmongering jagoff. Should someone bomb us? 500,000 Iraqi kids died because of our drug embargo in the night. Should someone bomb us? So this is war propaganda at the top of their lungs at 1,000 miles an hour. This is war propaganda from a guy who used to be the head of the Democratic Party and now given a free seat on mainstream news media because he's willing to say this all day long and wag his finger at a veteran. A veteran.
I can't imagine how you could make a statement like that, especially being on the Foreign Relations Committee. I can't imagine what could possibly have been going through her head.
I don't know, maybe facts. What could be possibly going through her head calling for the UN to do the proper investigation? Imagine! She doesn't want a future in the Democratic Party or on establishment corporate news. What could possibly be going through her head? Maybe she doesn't want people to die because she's a fucking veteran. She doesn't want more people to die. You know, how many soldiers commit suicide every goddamn day, you fucking warmonger? And you want me to unite again around this shit? You're calling for Donald Trump to start a war. The guy who's unfit to be in the office. The guy who's an existential threat to our democracy. You can't have him in commander-in-chief with his finger on the button. Hey, let's have that guy start a war. If there's anyone lower in politics today than Howard Dean, please let me know about him, because that guy is a scum.
And to that end, you put a tweet out there. I'm going to read it to everybody, okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so you said that Gabbard should not be in Congress, that this is a disgrace. All she's asking for is proof, though. Is that a...
And there's your pushback. Did you hear the pushback from the MSNBC host? All she's asking for is proof, though. Instead of saying, no, Howard, she's asking for proof, which is the proper thing to do. She's waiting for a UN investigation. I don't know if you remember what happened in Iraq, Libya. She's waiting for, that's what you're supposed to do. That's not how she said it. At least she said it. And now let's listen to Howard Dean steamroller.
If you're on the Foreign Relations Committee and you haven't seen the proof in the last 5.5 years that Assad is a butcher and used chemical weapons, there's something the matter with you.
Again, that's just lying. He's just lying at the top of his lungs at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And he's saying there's something wrong with a veteran, Tulsi Gabbard, who doesn't want to rush to war before there's an investigation. There's something wrong with her. Even though all that stuff he just said is fucking false. And we've proved it on this show. Other people have proved it. That false flag gas attack in 2013 was just that. Was done by ISIS with gas gotten from Turkey. They don't get much worse than Howard Dean. But this is, and it's not just Howard Dean, but everybody, the whole Democratic Party's doing that to Tulsi Gabbard. So that's what makes me depressed, sad, and scared for our future. Because it's exactly what happened to the run-up to the war, Iraq war. The Democrats got on board. And this is what we have now. A guy like Howard Dean shaming someone who calls for an investigation. This former soldier, not a big enough warmonger for Howard Dean. She won't bomb quick enough. You're not going to shoot first and ask questions later? What could possibly be going through your mind? This is what Howard... And this guy is going to continue to be brought on cable television for his opinion. These other kind of geniuses who go on cable television. I'm done. But that's what's happening. And right now, YouTube and the Wall Street Journal, they're all making sure shows like us aren't monetized. You know what is monetized? That shit. They're making sure that they're trying to make sure this voice doesn't get out there. That these ideas, this anti-war news show doesn't get out there. Right now that's happening. They're taking away our money. So maybe we'll go away. But I'm not going away because it turns out our audience is supporting us through Patreon, through our premium program. Howard Dean. Scum of the earth. Worst person in the world. A draft dodger now wagging his finger at a fucking veteran who's standing up for peace. If you can show me what makes someone scummier than that. I don't think there is anything than that. You want other people to get killed in a war that you're too cowardly to fight in. And then you try to shame, you smear a veteran who's calling for an investigation, which is the proper thing to do. Howard Dean, today's shittiest person in the world.